Here's the photo of my very first check-in when I first started competing in bodybuilding. And here's a photo of me 3 months later, ready to compete in my very first competition. I think to some people, it might look like there's not a big difference between those photos. Women who lift know it's hard to build muscle, especially when you're cutting weight, especially when you're dropping weight for a bodybuilding competition, which is an extreme low weight you're trying to achieve. And I feel like there's so many before and afters that look like this out there. So I wanted to be very open and honest about everything that went through this quick transformation of mine. I feel like many people compare their fitness journey to these quick transformations and think that there's something wrong with everything they're doing because they're not seeing quick results like other people are. And many times these photos don't really reveal the whole truth of what went through that period. And that's what I want to talk about here. Everything that went on in my quick transformation. Nothing is gonna stay hidden. And before I get started, if you don't know me, hi. I'm Eleni, IFBB Bikini Pro and soon to be fitness coach. Let me just give a very quick backstory about my fitness journey. I first started when I was 17 to 18 years old. I actually started taking more seriously only when I was 18. I'm 35 now. So back then, honestly, I started because I was very skinny and I was getting nicknames in college and I was tired of it. So I wanted to transform my body. The beauty standard where I grew up in Brazil was of the curvy, muscular woman, and I was nothing like that. In fact, I'm nothing like that still, but I really wanted to transform my body. Eventually, the gym became way more than aesthetics because I realized that that was something I enjoyed, and it was a stress relief for the period where I was going through college, and I didn't quite enjoy college, so I had something that I enjoyed doing that brought me some challenges that actually meant something to me. So fast forward 6 years later, I ended up moving to the US to get married to my husband, and I had a hard time adjusting to a new country. That first year, I started doing CrossFit. For some time, it was fine, but eventually I just grew tired of it. Like I said, I wasn't in a great mental state because I was having trouble adjusting. I wasn't able to work yet because I hadn't got my documents yet. Everything seemed to be falling apart around me, and eventually for the first time in years I wasn't really going to the gym. I couldn't care less about my diet. For you to have an idea, I would buy those gigantic bottles of Nutella and I would sit in front of the TV with some fruits and I would just eat the whole thing at once. And that wasn't just that. I would eat at McDonald's often. My diet was a mess then. Imagine 1 year of not really going to the gym anymore. Maybe I would go once or twice, but that was about it. And eating junk food in front of the TV the whole day. That's where I was at. So obviously, those gains that I made in the past were not the same, and I was gaining a lot of body fat. I don't really have a tendency to put on too much weight. So even though I was eating a lot of unhealthy foods, I didn't put on a lot of weight, as you can see in my first check-in photo. But my body composition changed during that period of time for obvious reasons. That's when my first bodybuilding coach saw me at the gym on one of those rare days that I was still going to the gym. She approached me and talked about bodybuilding. At first, I was so confused because I didn't know how I could be doing bodybuilding. Bodybuilding for me was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that was about it. But since I was going through a depression during that period, I thought that maybe that could challenge myself to be better, that could give me something to focus on. And it was true. For the first time in a year or so, I saw myself caring again and getting the hope back. The feeling of hope, the feeling of expecting something good for the future. And that felt amazing. I started hitting the gym 5 times a week again. I started caring about eating healthy foods again. However, if you know anything about bodybuilding competitions and bodybuilding in general, you know that eating healthy foods is not enough for you to achieve the competition shape, the competition physique. You have to be at a very lean level for your muscles to show, especially if you have small muscles like me. I need to be at a lean level to get any type of muscle definition, unless it's on my abs for whatever reason. That's what my body decided. Everything else, I need to be very lean for me to be able to show some muscle definition, especially then when I had less muscle still. Okay, now we get to the good part. What happened during those 3 months where my body transformed? First thing that I started doing when I started working with my first coach was to start going to the gym again, obviously. But this time I was doing a training that was focused on bodybuilding. I was focusing on shoulders for the first time, which was something that I didn't care much about before. And everything else was tailored for shoulders, glutes definition, which are the things that are the most important in the bikini division. So obviously I started regaining the muscle that I had previously and maybe a bit more in the case of shoulders where I wasn't really focusing on before. But I think the main thing that made the whole difference in this transformation was the diet. So what was I eating? Well, what any mainstream fitness influencer eats or claims to eat: tilapia, rice, asparagus, you know, the classics. But I think more important than what I was eating was what I was not eating. I was on a very restrictive, low-calorie diet that made me drop body fat very quickly in those 3 months. And I was able to achieve the lean physique that's required for the bodybuilding stage. At the level of muscularity that I had then, I had to be even leaner than my past competitions because I didn't have too much muscle. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Did I take enhancement drugs? No. I did not. I think there were some people at my gym that thought I did because they didn't know of my past history working out. I had been working out for several years before I went through that 1 year where I was going through a depression and I wasn't really working out or eating healthy anymore. But before that, I was building a foundation that people didn't see. If you just look at the before and after photos, it just looks like I went from 0 to that crazy stage look, when that's not the truth. Like I said, when I went through my depression period, at the point I had already accumulated more or less 7 years of lifting, 5 years at the gym, 3 years at CrossFit. So I already had some type of foundation when I was getting started. Now, did I take diuretics? Yes. Yes, I did. And that's something that I regret because it's a risk that's really not worth taking. But when you start getting to the stage day when you are so pressured to look your best, you end up doing things that you wouldn't do in a normal situation, especially when you are depriving yourself of normal calories. Your brain is not working at its best. Everything combined with the pressure leads you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. Also, do I think that diuretics were necessary? They were not, because I was so lean. And diuretics are usually used for people that are on enhancement drugs, because when you're on enhancement drugs, you tend to hold water weight. But that's not the case for naturals. There was no purpose on that, yet I did it because I didn't know any better. But I just want to give the full story here. So I went to the show and I actually won overall novice, which was great. It was great for my self-esteem then, especially because I was going through such a hard period of my life. But then after the show was over, that motivation that I had to continue eating healthy and clean, that went away. So I went back to my old habits pretty quickly. And right after I was done with the show and I was done with the crazy prep that was hell, I'm not gonna lie, I got extremely sick with the flu. I think that a lot of it had to do with the extended calorie restriction, some to the extreme cardio and training routine, all of that when I had a 9-to-5 job, going to the office and adjusting to a new country. It was a lot. I was sick with the flu for 2 weeks, and when I tell you it was brutal, brutal. I mean it. It was brutal. For those 2 weeks, I couldn't care less about my diet because I was just focused on surviving at that point. What happens after a period of extreme calorie restriction followed by a period of not caring about what you're eating? A rebound. I gained a lot of weight during that time, and it was weight I had never gained before in my life because I never went through calorie restrictions. Most of my life I was actually trying to gain weight. So that was new to me. That was something that I didn't really have to deal with in the past, even when my diet was at its worst. I didn't know anything about a reverse diet and getting your calories back up slowly. I made a video about my reverse diet process now if you want to take a look at that, but I didn't know anything about that. I just carried on like that, and then a few weeks later, after I went through all that, I decided to compete again. So I jumped right into a prep again, and again I went through the calorie restriction, everything that I told you here. Once again, it was hell. When I prepped myself for my last show, I didn't feel the need to go through that anymore. I still think I was able to bring a good physique by just being smarter, but I'm giving you the full story of what happened then. I went through that starvation diet again. I won overall open this time, which was awesome. It seemed like my effort was paying off. But then, what do you think happened after this second show? Again, I got incredibly sick with the flu or whatever that was. I was sick in a brutal way for 2 weeks. Again, I think it was because of the extreme calorie restriction, some to the extreme workout and cardio routine. Again, I regained a lot of weight, more than I had gained before. Eventually, I was able to learn a thing or two about my diet and what works best for me. I don't go through crazy diets like that anymore, even when I'm cutting for a competition or even when I'm cutting for whatever reason. I made a video about how I go through my cutting phases now without ruining my metabolism like I did before. You can check here if you want, but I just wanted to give a full disclosure about everything that happened in the before and after transformation. Sometimes there are enhancement drugs that get involved. In my case, it wasn't, but sometimes people will lie about it. So if you're questioning if I'm telling you the truth or not, well, you should, because you don't know me, right? But I just wanted to give the most honest story about everything that happened during that transformation, so you don't think there's something wrong with your fitness journey just because it's taking longer than people claim that theirs have taken. Quick results don't stay. If you want long-term results, you need to be patient. Everything takes time. Building muscle takes time. Losing weight takes time, as long as you want those results to stay. Is there anything else that you want to know? Let me know here in the comments. Anything that I forgot to cover, please ask questions. I'm being very open here about this crazy transformation of mine, and please don't do the same. I'm super new here on YouTube, so I'm very open to comments and feedback. Let me know whatever you want to see here next, and thanks for watching this video. See you next week.